When America was attacked on September 11, 2001, it faced an unconventional enemy with an army built for conventional warfare. Now, Congressman Barney Frank is pushing to reorganize the military to face modern threats by shrinking the military budget. Ken Brady brings us this report.
Sunday, April 26th. Newton's congressional representative Barney Frank spoke to a crowd of supporters on what will surely be a polarizing issue in the weeks and months to come.
Two things have to be done if we are going to not only meet the legitimate needs that we have as a people for the quality of our lives, but stop the erosion. One, there has to be an increase in taxation. Secondly, we've got to cut military spending.
The U.S. military, well known to be the most powerful in the world, was of course built primarily to grapple with the Soviet Union, but since its collapse, the threats America faces have become decidedly different.
We haven't had a major aerial dogfight in a very long time. The number of fighters owned by Al-Qaeda is quite minimal.
A touchstone of this Cold War posture is the $140 million F-22 fighter plane.
We are continuing to spend money on Cold War weapons. There's a great momentum. And there are some weapons that are marvelous from the technical standpoint, but they have one defect. They have no enemy. That ought to be a prerequisite for a weapon. There ought to have to be someone who you're going to have to use it against. The F-22 fighter is an example. I want to cancel the F-22 not because it's not a great plane, but we don't need it. I don't want there to be the kind of military activities in which it would be engaged. There is a conceivable military fight over Taiwan. If the Taiwanese were to declare independence, there would be a military situation there. At this point, we clearly have a military superiority over them there, and we will continue to. In fact, even if you cut the military the way I'm talking about, in every year we would be adding far more than the Chinese. So the answer is, it would not have missile defense of a strategic sort. It would not have the long-range Cold War delivery weapons, but it would have otherwise a military that looked very similar to the one we have now, with a better conventional fighting force if that became necessary.
As is to be expected, there's a great deal of resistance to the idea of cutting the military budget. One frequent defense of military spending levels is the assertion that the spending creates jobs, like those at nearby Raytheon. Frank made a point of rebutting this claim.
You've heard conservatives talk about what a waste it was to do the economic recovery plan because, as they say in their philosophy, government spending cannot produce any jobs, with one exception. Apparently, weapons spending has a magical quality that spending, for instance, to build a highway or to digitize medical records doesn't have. When it comes to weapons, I've said I think I said in The Nation, it's a form of militarized Keynesianism. Oh, we got to do it for jobs. It's the biggest jobs program. But I asked Alan Greenspan, no great radical, this over 10 years ago, what is the economic argument about military spending? If you cut it, is that a bad thing? He said, no, of course not. Look, he said, military spending, you should think of it as comparable to insurance. You buy insurance if you need it, but it's not a very productive use.
Another concern when discussing defense spending is the nation's military readiness. And with growing troop levels in Afghanistan, some question the wisdom and timing of Frank's proposed cut.
It is also increasingly clear that a military solution to Afghanistan, there might have been an easier way to help Afghanistan deal with its problems if there hadn't been this diversion to Iraq. But by now, it is clear that there has to be a revision of the strategy, and more military force does not appear to be going to be very effective.
As to the political viability of his plan, given the broad appeal military spending has across the country, the battle ahead of Frank may seem an uphill one. However, the representative is confident that the cuts he proposes are less controversial than they first appear, as they will not shrink the military inside the U.S., but rather reduce our presence abroad.
We're not talking about a great reduction of military bases in the U.S. We are talking, I think, mostly about reducing military bases elsewhere. We've already passed legislation that gives the Defense Department the power to cut military bases in the U.S. That's actually worked pretty well. So what we're talking about now is cutting military bases overseas where you don't have that political problem.
Ken Brady, Newton News, Newton Corner.